Yes, I just straight up ripped off the CinemaSins intro. No regrets. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about the graphics and how much they suck. So if we take a look at this right here, yeah, this pretty much sucks. Also, this sucks. This kind of looks like ass. This also here, super mega ultra. Wow. Listen here, mate. You can't make a video about the graphics. Wait, what? Fantastic Tuesday? How did you get in my video? It's not important right now. What is important is that you check this out. Holy shit. God, I hate that song. But anyway, guys, welcome back to an Everything Wrong with MechWarrior Online video, where I was originally going to do graphics as the topic of discussion, but then literally in the middle of starting to make the video, this came out right here, which means it's only natural we talk about this today. And just, you know, the balance of the game in general, which is a much bigger topic to hit, which is why I kind of wanted to put it off for a little bit to gather a little more info and get prepared and whatever. But PGI has forced my hand with this announcement, and so we're going to dive right into this. And I want to cover a lot of the main topics of balance in the game, which would be, of course, ghost heat, the quirk system, and weapon balance, etc. So without further ado, let's just dive right into this, because right here, okay, this new announcement by PGI, they're getting rid of ghost heat. Only to be replaced with a more complicated and convoluted system called energy draw? Oh, Jesus Christ. Alright, let me... I'll clarify that this is a public test build that they had going on last night. These are not official patch notes or anything, so of course, you know, disclaimer, none of this is official yet and may not show up in the game, you know, as a patch or something. But just going on PGI's history and past with these public test sessions, usually what we see in these PTSDs does end up in the game anyway, despite user feedback. But I'll hold my tongue on that, and let me begin with starting off why, you know, ghost heat was, well, pretty much a terrible idea. Everybody, I think, universally hated ghost heat. It wasn't even called ghost heat. That wasn't even the real name. That was the name the community came up with because it was just so stupid. Now, if you don't know what ghost heat is, I'm just gonna quickly explain it. I mean, I don't know who doesn't know what ghost heat is because it's been in the game forever, but just in case, basically it's a fake limitation, a fake penalty they put in the game for firing too many weapons at once, particularly too many of the same weapon type. It was to try to prevent the boating of weapons, you know, boating the same weapons on a mech. And what this means is if you fire too many of the same weapon type at a time, you get a massive heat spike penalty that will, you know, pretty much, in most cases, shut down your mech from overheating. So, for example, you can't fire more than 2 PPCs or 2 large lasers at a time without incurring this extreme heat penalty. Not only does this system not make any sense, right? Like, firing 2 large lasers does 20% heat, firing 3 large lasers does 30% heat, but then firing 4 large lasers does 60% heat? What? Not only does it make absolutely no sense whatsoever, but it's also just a poor way to balance the game. Any game where you have to create these fake limitations, these fake penalties to balance your game, you're doing it the wrong way. In fact, I can't even think of another game that incurs penalties in this way, like this for firing too many weapons at once. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but is there even another game like that introduces fake penalties, you know, based on how many weapons you fire or how much damage you do with like a system like this? It's a completely ridiculous system. And I know like Russ and Paul are like super proud of this system that they came up with and everything, but you know, it's just not a good system, guys. I can't even say I've ever come across anybody in the game who actually likes ghost heat. I mean, it's pretty much universally known and hated in the MechWarrior Online community. In fact, I bet I could just hop on the Beer Warrior Discord channel right now. Let me just find somebody completely random and ask them what they think of ghost heat. Hang on. Hey guys.
Hello.
I have a very important question for you, okay? If you could describe ghost heat in like 1 or 2 words, what would you say?
You know I don't play MechWarrior.
Okay.
I would describe it as a gameplay design decision. Wait, how many words? 2 words.
Can you even fit it in 2 words or no?
Can I have 3 words?
Alright, you can have 3 words.
I want to say pointless math problem.
And I would say nebulous, just nebulous.
Nebulous. If you want one word, I'll go with why.
We would all rather see a much better and, realistic way to balance the game and the weapons to prevent the boating and everything like that. Because yes, the boating and high alpha damage strikes is a problem. A problem which PGI actually introduced themselves a long time ago. I'll get into that in a second here, but Ghost Heat just is not the correct solution. So I'm really glad that PGI is finally acknowledging that, and they're removing Ghost Heat. That's great, that's amazing. But what is this new system they're implementing? Energy draw? Alright, well, let's see, let's take a look. First of all, I'd like to point out that the community is already calling this Ghost Heat 2.0, which kind of says something about the system, but let's take a look here. Okay, yeah, this is what they want to do. This is their goals with it, alright. Oh, some new HUD things. Oh, I got another bar to keep an eye on now. That's, good, I guess. Oh, another heat indicator. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, here, how energy draw works. Each mech now has an energy value represented in the energy status bar. The total amount of energy a mech can possess is 30 energy in this current public test build. This value is currently the same for all mechs. A full energy status bar therefore means you have 30 points available of energy. Most weapons will have a weapon energy value. It is the value which determines how much energy is drawn from the energy status bar when the weapon is fired. If you consume more energy than you have available in your energy status bar, the critical energy indicator will light up to indicate that you have incurred a heat penalty. So it is Ghost Heat 2.0. It's literally a more complicated method of Ghost Heat. What? Let's see. Hang on. All right. So yeah, here's the initial energy weapon values. 1 energy point equals 1 point of damage. All right. So example, inner sphere medium laser has a damage value of 5. Every time a single IS medium laser is fired, 5 energy points will be taken from your energy status bar. So firing 4 medium lasers simultaneously will draw 20 energy from your energy status bar. So all weapons use energy now. So it's basically global Ghost Heat. What they've done here is, instead of making the Ghost Heat penalty per weapon base, like having, firing more than 2 large lasers or firing more than 2 PPCs at a time, it's firing more than a certain amount of damage at a time. If I alpha strike and it's over 30 damage, I incur a heat penalty. It's global Ghost Heat. I'm trying to be serious here, but I can't believe this. Why don't they just make the heat capacity 30 again like it's supposed to be, instead of having this 30 damage limit? It just doesn't make any sense. I'll expand on that idea in a moment, but I'm looking at the feedback form right now. It doesn't look like people are really sold on this or happy either. I mean, PGI, this is not what we wanted. You guys are still trying to balance the game the wrong way. You're going the wrong way about it. You've had Ghost Heat in the game for how many years now? You're just realizing it's a system that doesn't work after tons and tons of people have told you that they don't like Ghost Heat, or Ghost Heat isn't working. It's, a bad way to balance the game. People have offered tons of alternatives and suggestions to try and help, and you go and make Ghost Heat 2.0. Literally, you're building onto a system that already has failed, already didn't work. I mean, and for those who are MechWarrior fans like me, this is also kind of a kick in the ass, because we're further being pushed away from a MechWarrior title, what MechWarrior is supposed to be. They've implemented something now, this energy draw system, which was never a part of MechWarrior BattleTech or anything. And I'm not saying that, change can't be good. For example, like the introduction of a hardpoint system, I actually like. I think that's a good idea. It fits in kind of like with the MechWarrior style with BattleTech. It makes sense, right? And it was something that we saw in MechWarrior 4. MechWarrior 4 was the first MechWarrior game to introduce this hardpoint system. But the energy draw, it really just doesn't fit. This doesn't feel like MechWarrior anymore. This feels like some bad interpretation of what MechWarrior should be and supposed to be. And I really hate to be kind of taking the piss out on PGI here, but it's just It's just not good. It's not good! But with that all said and done, I did play the public test build last night. And, I mean, even though it is another ridiculous system, at least it's better than just straight up ghost heat that we had before. I will say, I will give PGI credit. It is a step in the right direction because, well, because it's not ghost heat. I think even though having a global kind of ghost heat on based on how much damage you're doing is at least better than what we had before. Still not entirely what we're looking for, but at the same time I do need to talk about all the other changes because this isn't the only one. If we look at what they wrote here, they've actually increased the weapon cooldown globally for all weapons by 15%, and then further increase the cooldowns for other weapons and also increase the heat for other weapons. Now this is a very good change. This is definitely a step in the right direction, as a lot of the bigger, badder weapons like PPCs and AC-20s, all these weapons could be fired far too quickly, like within 3 to 5 seconds, depending on, quirks and all that stuff with the modules. You could fire these big weapons pretty quick. Where if we look at like all the previous MechWarrior titles, right, these weapons had huge cooldown times. We're talking 6 seconds, 8 seconds, even 10 seconds for some of these, because they were, they were so powerful. They did a lot of damage and a lot of, more importantly, pinpoint damage. Right? These weapons are supposed to have higher cooldown times, so, take longer to recycle so that you can fire again, and so they were also supposed to generate a lot more heat as well. So this is definitely a very, very good step in the right direction. Also, this right here, oh my god, the Gauss charge mechanic has been removed! Definitely a step in the right direction. Another fake limitation that PGI made up for quote-unquote balance that really didn't make sense, since the Gauss rifle explodes if it takes a critical hit, much like ammo explodes, but the Gauss ammo doesn't explode. Instead, it's the Gauss rifle that explodes. However, the whole reason that it explodes is because it's supposed to always be charged, and when it takes a critical hit, that's what causes it, because it's charged, it blows up. And adding this charge to the Gauss rifle was, in my opinion, a pretty dumb idea and didn't really fix the problem anyway, since of course they had to further balance the Gauss rifle by making it so you could only fire 2 at a time. Again, everything we're talking about here, these changes came into play years ago, and they're only just now finally getting around to these problems and trying to resolve them. And what they've also done with the Gauss rifle now is increased the cooldown for Gauss as well to almost 7 seconds, which I think it should even be higher than that, because on top of this, they've also restricted each mech to not being able to equip more than 2 Gauss rifles at a time. Otherwise, it comes back as an invalid build. Again, another kind of like fake limitation, along with also cutting the Gauss rifle's range in half. That's a little surprising, but does actually make sense, and should even be lower than that. If we look at the previous games, the Gauss rifle's range is, somewhere around 800, 900 meters, which they more than doubled in MechWarrior Online for some reason. The Gauss rifle is supposed to have a very high cooldown time. That thing takes it's supposed to take a long time to recycle so that you can fire it again, because of how powerful of a weapon it actually is. I would much rather see them remove this right here, remove the restriction of only being able to equip 2 Gauss rifles at a time, and merely just increase the Gauss rifle cooldown time. In fact, to further expand upon this, I want to give what would be my solution to the balancing problem. Now remember, this is my solution, what I think they should do, my opinion, basically. So I understand that some people may not agree with everything I'm about to say. But the first thing I'm going to say is, PGI, stop with the ghost heat. Stop with the fake limitations, the fake penalties, stuff that, really doesn't make any sense. And I can understand that this, it kind of sucks when you put a lot of work into a system that ultimately just fails. Ghost heat, as much work as you guys may have put into it, was a bad system. This right here, energy draw, is another bad system. And the thing is, you guys have almost 30 years of MechWarrior games to look back at and take from. I mean, it's not like this is the first MechWarrior game in existence. You know, there are several other MechWarrior titles that have gone through these development processes for balancing and all this stuff. Now, that's not to say, you know, MechWarrior 1, 2, 3, and 4 are completely perfect and completely balanced, because no, they're not. They all have their flaws, but none of them had to make up these fake penalties. You know, there was no ghost heat in MechWarrior 3 and 2 and 4. There's no energy draw system in these games. And for the most part, the way the games were balanced were, you know, pretty damn good. Now, I do understand that when it comes to the clan technology, PGI does have to come up with their own values for that stuff to balance, you know, the clan tech to the inner sphere tech, because in the lore and in all the previous MechWarrior games, because those were single player oriented games for the most part, the clan tech was always better. Always, in every single way possible. Clan technology was lighter, it fired quicker, it had a longer range, it did more damage. I mean, there was pretty much no downside to clan technology. So I do understand the need to come up with, you know, basically kind of reinvent the wheel, or in this case, clan tech, for a game like MechWarrior Online. Because if the game was truly true to the lore and true to MechWarrior, any mech could mix and match clan tech and everybody would just be running the clan technology, because all the inner sphere technology would be inferior. So, I don't really mind that clan mechs can only use clan weapons and IS mechs can only use IS weapons. Like, that's not a big deal. You guys gotta make up values for that to balance that out. That's fine. But take note from the previous games. Like, increasing all these cooldowns for weapons is a huge thing. This is very good. You know, like I said already before, these weapons are supposed to have high recycle times, especially the more powerful weapons like AC-20s, PPCs, you know, 6, 8, even 10-second recycle times. Now, the other big thing for balancing here is the heat. Obviously, the heat is a big problem, but it wasn't always a problem. And now I'm going back to something I said earlier in this video when I said about the whole when boating weapons and, you know, high damage alphas became a thing. This was something that PGI did. This goes way back to closed beta, and if you guys remember, if anybody was around for closed beta, we didn't have these problems. There was no ghost heat, and there was no really high damage alphaing, people boating a lot of the same weapons. It just, that didn't exist in closed beta. And the reason for that is that the heat capacity was a lot lower back then. Mind you, we also didn't even have double heat sinks yet, and actually that's what happened. The introduction of double heat sinks introduced a new heat capacity. So equipping double heat sinks actually raises your heat capacity, giving you more room to fire a lot before overheating. Now, I think that right there is one of the big problems, because not only does it go against the lore and every MechWarrior game, as double heat sinks were never supposed to increase heat capacity. They never did that. They were merely supposed to increase the dissipation, the rate at which it would cool down your mech. They were supposed to double the speed of heat dissipation at the expense of taking up more critical slots in your mech. And increasing the heat capacity is what initially opened up the option for people to boat a lot of the same weapons at once and have these high damage alphas without much penalty. So basically what I'm proposing is that they remove the ability of double heat sinks increasing your heat capacity and merely just increasing heat dissipation, like it's technically supposed to. And would also allow us to finally have real, true double heat sinks, instead of, you know, what they actually are now, which is 1.5 heat sinks. Heat capacity, on the other hand, should be something that is determined by the mech, by the weight class and by the size. Now, I'm just throwing this in here as kind of like an idea, this is my opinion, but it would make sense after all. A bigger mech would be able to generate more heat because it, you know, can spread the heat out more before overheating itself. And I think this is something that was actually relevant in MechWarrior 4 as well. I mean, either that or we could just go back to 30 heat capacity all across the board like, you know, initially it's supposed to be. But ultimately, if they remove the extra heat capacity that double heat sinks give mechs, I believe it would pretty much immediately solve a lot of the problems with people boating a lot of the same weapons and these high damage alphas that they are trying to fix. And also, as you can see here, they've even acknowledged that they are trying to raise TTK, which is time to kill. Now, I played in closed beta quite a lot. The time to kill was very high. back in closed beta. Again, remember, we're all playing with single heat sinks. There was no endo steel, there was no ferrofibrous. So not only could we not fire a lot before overheating, we also couldn't fit a lot on the mech in the first place because of, you know, the lack of endo steel. But mainly because we would, you know, overheat. I still have some gameplay footage that I recorded back in closed beta where I could literally run into the entire enemy team in my little commando, pew-pewing with my one laser and, you know, a few SRMs, and come out with just a couple scratches, or at the very least alive. Mind you, I was also running with a standard engine under 100 kph in this tiny little commando. And, you know, if you tried doing that today, you would immediately just be one shot and dead. I feel like the game back in closed beta was a lot more balanced then because they had initially balanced all the weapons and the heat capacity and everything around single heat sinks, and then when they kind of introduced double heat sinks, it threw everything way off balance. I mean, you guys remember the 6 PPC Stalker nightmares, you know, and I think PGI is still trying to recover from that. And I'm hoping that by seeing this video, maybe they realize what the initial error was, the initial mistake, and how to fix it. The solution is not coming up with another convoluted Ghost Heat 2.0 plan. I believe it's very much removing that extra heat capacity. But that's my 2 cents. I'm getting close to the end of the video here, and I wanted to just briefly touch on quirks really quick. Personally, I hate quirks. I can see in some way them making sense, like, you know, the mechs being designed for certain weapons and stuff. Like, okay, that's kind of cool, but the way quirks work right now in MechWarrior Online, it very much promotes the cookie cutter build. You know, you get a mech that has all these, you know, plus quirks to like PPCs. Well, if you don't run PPCs on that mech, you're gonna be at a disadvantage to somebody who is running PPCs on that mech, you know? And it does the opposite of promoting the user to build the mech they want. Instead of building the mech you want, you kind of have to follow the quirk system, or you're going to be at a disadvantage, and that's just not fun for anyone, really. I would love to see the removal of quirks entirely, and perhaps instead, maybe something like the hardpoint system from MechWarrior 4. Now again, I know, you know, this is just my opinion, a lot of people may disagree with this, but I really thought the hardpoint system in MechWarrior 4 was actually a really cool idea, and also at the same time made sense. Not only because, you know, you could no longer put like lasers in your obvious missile pods like you could in previous MechWarrior games, but also smaller mechs would have these smaller hardpoints, right? You know, you couldn't put a Gauss rifle or a PPC on a Jenner just because it didn't have the space for it. PPCs were too large. And then if you had a energy hardpoint system with like 4 energy slots, it could fit, you know, 1 PPC that took up those 4 slots, or 4 medium lasers that took up 1 slot each. This prevented the boating of a lot of large and heavy weapons. And it was a really cool and interesting way to balance out the mechs and the hardpoint system. I would definitely love to see that instead of the quirk system. I mean, honestly, I would just love to get rid of quirks altogether, but anyway, that was pretty much everything wrong with balance in MechWarrior Online. I know there's a few things I didn't touch on. Maybe I'll make a balance part 2 or something. If you agree with this video or anything I said, don't like, don't subscribe, don't favorite, don't comment. Just send it to Russ. In fact, write the URL of this video on a letter and then mail it to PGI's office. Send it right to Russ's and Paul's doorstep. Alright, I'm out of here, folks. Thanks for watching. Peace.
What I was trying to say is it's a kind of gameplay decision that only Paul could make. It's something that he wasn't really thinking about how it would affect the gameplay. He just wanted to come up with a crazy mathematical system because that seems to entertain him.
Never in any MechWarrior game have you needed to like draw energy from a source to, you know?
You sound triggered.
I am triggered. I'm being shot by my teammate. Now I am triggered.
Oh, that's a redirect.
He told me to kill him. He told me to kill him. I just alpha strike. What?